Okay, Rabotai, let's begin. We are on Daf Yud Bet Amud Aleph 12a5. We are on, if you're following in the Gemara, Tanu Rabbanan, you should find it right about a little bit more than half the way down the page, right along the outer reaches of the page. And if you're following in the English, Tanu Rabbanan, we are about midway through the page 12a5. Im yatso yetze harotzeach. If the rotzeach, the killer, yatso yetze, shall go out, shall go out. Now the Torah does this a lot of times. Yatso yetze, hocheach tochiach, hakem takim, shalem yishalem, right? Many, many times. The Torah uses a double expression, naton titen. So many times you find this double expression of the verb, okay? Now, the Gemara says, Im yatso yetze harotzeach, if the rotzeach, if the murderer will leave, go out of the city, enli ele mezid, I only would have thought that you could kill him. Remember, we had two opinions. One opinion says that the goel adam, the family member, has the right to kill him if he leaves the city of refuge. One opinion said, not only does he have the right to, he has a mitzvah to kill him if he leaves the city of refuge, okay? Because he's supposed to be enforcing the punishment for the accidental yet negligent murder of his family member. So either it's a mitzvah or it's permission. I understand that that's if he left on purpose. In other words, he said, you know what? I have tickets to Game 7 of of the NBA Finals, if it gets there, right? I have tickets to NBA Game 7. I'm going. And he leaves. That's on purpose. You're not allowed to kill. He's flaunting the law of exile. So I would understand that that's where they both had their opinions. But, b'shogeg minayin, what happens if the guy doesn't realize? Had that on his AirPods, he's listening to breakfast in the class, he's wandering through the streets of the city. As he's wandering and walking or jogging or riding his bicycle, he leaves the confines of the city. And then he leaves the outskirts, the area of surrounding the city. And he's riding out into the outside the city limits. Now he's left the city by mistake. All of a sudden, my Google alerts go off. And it says, the eagle has left the building. Bishogeg, the guy's not doing it. He's not planning on leaving. He's not planning on going anywhere. He just by mistake stepped out of the safe zone. How do I know? Bishogeg minayin. How do I know? I think what you're about to say is genius. Hold on. Talmud lomar, the pasuk says, Im yatso yetze. If he leaves, he leaves. What does he leaves? He leaves. Double language to include two types of leaving. Leaving on purpose and leaving by accident. What are you going to say?
It would be ironic if he negligently kills, and then because he leaves out of negligence, that negligence gets him killed. Excellent.
Okay, watch. You're going to see something very similar in just a second in the Gemara. The Gemara says, okay, so you just told me that this machloket of whether they're allowed to or they're obligated to kill him is true also b'shogeg if the guy leaves by accident. V'atanya, didn't we learn in the Braita? The Braita says, b'mezid neherag, if he leaves on purpose, he's killed. B'shogeg goleh. And if he leaves by accident, what do? We just return him back to his place of galut. So you see the Braita explicitly says that if he leaves by accident, that he just goes back. We don't kill him. The Gemara says, look, Asha, it's not a question, okay? This Braita is not disagreeing on what we just said, that b'shogeg, the guy gets killed. Why? Ha, kiman damar amrinan, dibrat Torah kilshon bnei adam. Ha, kiman damar lo amrinan, dibrat Torah kilshon bnei adam. There's a famous Talmud-wide machloket on, did the Torah speak in the language of humans? What does that mean? Sometimes people say, I'll give you an example. I'm trying to think of an example of a double speak that would be a human expression. I can't think of one offhand, but let's say as an example, oh boy, I'm going to break his legs, right? This guy, hakminish kenchainik. What does that mean? He's banging on my teapot. These expressions in English or in other languages, they've become part of the way we speak. So one opinion says that when the Torah speaks, it takes into account that the readers are human and that there are forms of speech in human speech which are very common. So shalem yishalem means you pay, you're going to pay. Naton titen means you're going to give, you shall surely give. But it doesn't necessarily mandate two different types of giving. It's only like a strengthening of the same thing that you were saying. Okay? Is that clear? Yeah? Now,
You die, and if you do this, you will surely die.
yeah, now, again, I wouldn't necessarily speak like that. But there are human expressions where you reinforce the idea and you don't mean that you're going to do it twice. All right? I'm going to kill you if you do that, you're so dead. It doesn't mean that you're going to kill him and then after he dies, you're going to chop up his body because it says two expressions of kill. Right? And why do you need two? Because human beings speak with superlatives. We use hyperbole. And since we speak that way, the Torah, in communicating with us, speaks the way that we would speak. Interesting, I just want to take a little tiny diversion. Every time the Torah talks about God, what is it doing? The language of the Gemara is l'saber et ha'ozen. And God took us out with his right hand. He doesn't have a hand and he doesn't have a right. And his God took us out with his with a mighty outstretched arm. He doesn't have an arm.
Anthropomorphic.
Excellent. That anthropomorphic expression is called in the language of the Talmud l'saber et ha'ozen. Although a disembodied voice cutting into a shiur saying the word anthropomorphic is incredibly, incredibly ironic. Right? Now, understand this. If every time the Torah does that, it's doing it l'saber et ha'ozen so that we should be able to understand.
Associate.
Right? It's human association with ideas that are outside of the realm of our experience. That means that the Torah is speaking in our language. So when it says something twice, maybe that's what it's doing. What does that mean? It means that when the Torah tells you, hocheach tochiach, you should rebuke, you shall surely rebuke. It doesn't mean that you have to learn all sorts of lessons out of it. It means you surely better rebuke. Rebuke the heck out of that guy, okay? But we're no limud from that. So the Gemara over here is saying, the opinion that says that if he leaves bishogeg, he dies, that's the opinion that says that the Torah did not speak the language of human beings. So when it says yatso yetzeh, it came to tell you two things. One, if he leaves on purpose. One, if he leaves by accident. That's that opinion. The other opinion, the other braita that says, no, only if he leaves b'mezid. It says yatso yetzeh, true. But that's just the human expression of the Torah, the type of expression the Torah would use because human beings are consuming it. Are we clear so far? So that machloket, the Gemara is using to be the underpinnings of these two opinions of bishogeg, if he dies or not. Amar Abaye says, it makes a lot of sense that actually over here the Torah is speaking the language of human beings. And therefore we do not punish you for leaving bishogeg. Makes a lot of sense. Why? The end should not be more strict than the beginning. מתחילתו במזיד נהרג בשוגג גולה, אף סופו במזיד נהרג בשוגג גולה. Abaye says, 1 second. Let's take a look at the actual act of murder that got us into the story. The guy killed by accident. If he killed on purpose, he gets killed. If he killed by accident, he goes to galut. How can it be that the punishment is worse than the crime? If he leaves on purpose, kill him. Just like if he killed on purpose, we kill him. If he killed by accident, we put him in galut. So if he left by accident, we should put him back in galut. So Abaye is telling, which is very similar to what you were saying earlier, right? Abaye is saying it makes sense that we should not make this dirasha, and that we should say that the Torah over here is speaking in a euphemistic way as opposed to in a literal way. Okay? Now, just to be clear, if there was a scenario where it would make no sense whatsoever for us to say that the Torah is not speaking Bilshon Bnei Adam, it makes no sense, then there wouldn't be a machloket. The whole disagreement is in a scenario where we're unsure how to apply the double language. So there we have a disagreement. What do we say? Do we learn something new, or do we just say that that's just a manner of speaking? You need to prove that there's something extra here in order to make a derasha. So Abaye says it doesn't, it makes sense to learn that we're not including mezid, right? And therefore, we're going to follow the opinion of Dibrat Torah L'Shom Bnei Adam, which means you don't have an extra second Yatso Yetzeh, which means that you're only going to get killed if you leave the Ir Miklat on purpose. Yes?
So, it was discussed last time, you have the city, and then you have the outskirts, which is like a field.
Correct.
Isn't it pretty obvious if you're walking in the city, then you happen to walk inside? It's going to be visually distinct, that outskirts. So, it's not negligence. It's extreme negligence in that case.
So there's two ways to look at shogeg. I'll give you two examples. The first way to look at shogeg is that the person did not realize what was happening. That might be harder over here in the scenario where there's outskirts. Might be harder, right? But there are examples for it. Like as an example, we said that you have to live in the city, but the safe zone begins in the outskirts. Imagine the guy is not at home now. He's out in the outskirts of the field. He's pulling up corn. I don't know what he's doing, right? He's right by the border.
Once you leave the city and you go in the field...
You're still koletet, we said.
Okay, so then I missed...
It's still a safe zone. You can't live there. So you're safe as soon as you get there. It's also the same way is true on the way out. So let's say I'm now in the fields outside the city. Or outside the fields, remember, there was the field and then there's empty space. I'm going on a jog around the perimeter of the city. And you know what? By accident, I stepped outside the lines.
What about if the guy...
Shogeg.
What about if the guy have a drink? And
Right,
I was sort of it's not clear.
Right, but that's probably honest. That's a level beyond shogeg. There's one other thing. What happens? Shogeg, we say always, let's say, what's shogeg on Shabbat?
Oh, yeah.
I didn't remember today was Shabbat.
Oh, wow.
I didn't know that this was Asur on Shabbat. Let's say as an example, someone says to him, listen, we need you in the next town. We know that you were there on the night of the 23rd of June, and you witnessed this thing. We need you to come and bear witness. Someone needs to mute. Right? We need you to bear witness in this court case. The guy thinks he's doing a mitzvah. What does he do? He leaves the city. No, that's shogeg.
Oh.
He didn't know that he wasn't allowed to. So one element of shogeg is when I don't realize I've left the city. The second element of shogeg is when I don't know that I'm not allowed to leave the city.
Right.
So there's multiple ways that the guy could get shogeg. But the easiest way to understand it would be, yes, correct, where it's not that he left the city and then the fields and then the open area, but rather that he was already in the open area, and then he left, maybe by accident, by not realizing that he was walking along.
It's going to be like the Mexican border, like there's clearly signs.
Right, exactly. Okay, maybe it was pre-Trump. Okay.
You have a question?
Yes, question.
Just to clarify, when you're saying he leaves you shogeg, but is he allowed to go back? Like if he goes back into the city, he's like safe. He's like back.
Yeah,
on base,
100%.
or-
100%.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
You step out and go back.
Okay.
Now the Gemara says, Tani Chada, we have a machloket between two different braitot. Tani Chada, we learned in one braita, Av she'arag, beno na'aseh lo goel adam. You have a father who by mistake killed his son. We actually have it in the Torah, right? With the whole story with Lemech, right, in Bereshit. By mistake. He killed his son by mistake. Beno na'aseh lo goel adam. Who now is the vengeful family to come and kill him? Beno, his second son or other sons, now become goel adam against their father. They can kill their own father. V'tanya idach, we learned another braita. En beno na'aseh lo goel adam. The son does not become a goel adam. Okay? So how do we hold? If a father by mistake kills his son, do the rest of the children have the din of goel adam? Remember, all with the same parameters. According to one opinion, they would be obligated. According to the other opinion, they would have permission to. But,
What about the Ten Commandments?
sorry?
What about the Ten Commandments?
That's exactly the question. One Braita is saying that even though he's not allowed to hit his father, here he's allowed to kill him. By the way, let me ask you a different question. Because I was thinking this right when I learned the Gemara the first time. Let's say a person sees his father running after someone to kill him. Does he have a mitzvah to save the guy his father's about to murder by killing his father, Rodef? Of course he does. So is that only because it's pikuach nefesh?
That's different.
Is it only because it's pikuach nefesh? Only because
One's intentional.
it's
the other
pikuach nefesh? Sorry?
isn't. One's intentional, the other isn't.
No, I understand. But what I'm saying is, Nathan's question is, we have the 10 commandments. We have an obligation not to hit. That's true. Not to cause to bleed, not to curse, all those things, to honor. But when there's a mitzvah that you have to do, pikuach nefesh. And that's exactly what the Gemara is going to say, Nathan. Let's say that the machloket over here is the braita that says that the son is not allowed to kill is because there's no mitzvah. If there's no mitzvah and you're allowed to kill the person, when I'm not allowed to kill him because I have a mitzvah prohibiting me from even causing a bruise, how much more so to kill? That opinion holds en beno naaseh goel adam. The other opinion, Rabbi Yossi Aglili, who holds that it's a mitzvah to kill, it's the same thing like rodef. Notwithstanding Jonathan's correct question that could maybe then incomparable because one is on purpose and one is, and by the way, that's not true. Rodef is not only when it's on purpose. So let's make the cases equal. Let's say, as an example, a guy is mountain climbing, and all of a sudden the other guy he's mountain climbing with falls. The ropes get entangled. This guy's rope only holds one person. Now there's two people hanging on the rope. Random guy and his father. The rope can't hold two people. The guy who fell and rope got tangled, that second guy, is now rodef. And you're allowed to cut the rope in order to save the first guy. Because he's chasing the first guy to kill. Okay? Same halakha, by the way, for a baby that's killing its mother. That the baby is causing complications of pregnancy, even though we always say an abortion is like killing somebody. But when the baby is killing his mother, the baby as a deen has a halakha of rodef. So rodef is not only when it's intentional. So yes, there would be a good differentiation that you made when it is, but the laws of rodef apply even when it's not. Okay? So what would we apply it over there? So if there's a mitzvah to save you, so what would we say? You have a mitzvah to honor your parents, true, but there's a mitzvah to kill in order to save. So the Gemara over here is saying, let's say that the machloket of the braitas is the machloket of Rabbi Yossi Aglili and Rabbi Akiva. The Gemara says, "V'tizbira." Does that make sense? That's the answer to this question. Ben lemanda amar mitzvah. Whether you go according to the opinion that says it's a mitzvah. Ben lemanda amar reshut. Mishari. Are you allowed? Is that something you're allowed to do? To be the one that carries out this punishment? V'ha'amar Baravuna. Didn't Rabba Baravuna. V'chen tan Rabbi Ishmael. Also the house, the yeshiva of Rabbi Ishmael. Didn't they teach us? Lakol. En aben naaseh shaliach le'aviv la'akoto u'kalaloto u'lekilalato chutz mimesit sharei amra Torah lo tachmo lo tachaseh alav. The halakha they taught is that in every scenario, a son is not allowed to be the one that administers these punishments to the father. So let's say you have a son that his job is in the Bet Din to be the one that administers the Makkot, the lashes, or whatever other punishment. L'hakoto, l'kilalato, right? To curse him for whatever reason that would happen. Maybe it means to put him in nidui, okay? Now, in either scenario, the child is not allowed to be the one that does this to the father. Why? The only example, the only exception to the rule is when a person is doing this, yes? Only exception is when a person is doing this and it's in a case of mesit. What's mesit? Mesit is we find out that a guy is convincing other people to worship idols. He's convincing them to leave Hashem and worship idols. The pasuk says explicitly when it comes to mesit that even though normally in a court case we look for every opportunity to exonerate the person, when it comes to a mesit, lo tachmol v'lo tachaseh. Torah tells us we should not engender and develop our compassion and try to find ways to protect the guy. If the guy is convincing people to worship idols, lo tachmol v'lo tachaseh. So since the Torah goes and tells you that there's no obligation for chemla and no obligation for lechasot, So therefore, it would apply even for the person's father. What are we learning from this teaching of Rabbi Bar Avuna and Deber Rabbi Ishmael? That every time when there's a punishment that's going to be administered, the son can't do it. Why? Because he has an obligation to honor his father. He's not allowed to hit him. If that's the case, and you told me that the only exception to the rule to that is mesit, so then how can it be that we're saying over here that the son is able to administer the punishment of the Goel Adam? Okay? So even if there's a mitzvah, it still should not be enough. So the Gemara does not like, what?
When you say it's the only example, is it really the only example, or is it the only type of example?
Explain what you mean and the difference.
If only means only, then there are no exceptions. If only is an example of something else that in the same category, then one might argue that there would be the exemption for rodef or for ir nidachat or mesit or the father accidentally killing another one of the sons.
No, only mesit.
Okay.
So from the exception of only mesit, we see that in no other case is a child able to be an agent to carry out punishment for his father.
Right.
So therefore, the fact that it's a mitzvah can't be a good enough reason, because then it wouldn't only be mesit. Okay? On that, the Gemara...
One of the other people on this Zoom wants to know where exactly on the page we are.
We are in the English or Hebrew. In the English, we are on 12a6, Ela lo kasha. Okay?
On the left side.
On the right side of the page on 12a6.
I never mind.
Ela lo kasha, second column, right? Ela lo kasha. It's like 6 lines from the end of the page 12a6 in English. And then you're following the Hebrew, and you're trying to find Ela lo kasha. So it's right there. You see where the gray line is? On the left side on the Hebrew page, it's right at the bottom of the gray line. Ela lo kasha. Answers the Gemara, no question. Ha bebeno veha beben beno. When it says that the son is able to kill him, that's talking about not beno, his son, but someone that we call his son, i.e., his grandson. The halacha of makeh aviv v'imo mot yumat, mekalel isha, person curses his father or his mother, he dies. That's for a son, not for a grandson. But halachically, we always call grandsons also sons. So therefore, the Gemara's answer to the contradiction in Braitot is that a grandson is able to become a Goel Adam, but the other bright that it says that his son does not become a Goel Adam is referring to his actual son. Okay, let's continue with the Mishnah. The Mishnah now tells us, okay, Ilan, Shehu Omed B'toch HaTchum, 12a7. Ilan Shehu Omed B'toch HaTchum, a tree that sits in the Tchum, in the actual border of the city. V'nofo note chutz latchum, but the branches grow out. Okay, so we don't yet need to be a tilted tree, because every tree grows branches outwards. Okay, so let's say the tree is planted completely in the tchum. The branch now goes out. O omed chutz latchum, or what if the tree is planted outside the tchum? Okay, v'nofo, but the branches note
Inside.
they lean into the tchum. Hakol olech achar aguf. Everything goes after the achar anof. Everything goes after the location of the branches. So in other words, if the branches are within the tchum, okay, and the guy is holding on for dear life to the trunk outside, you can't kill him because the branches are going in. If it goes the other way, the guy is now inside the tchum holding onto the tree. He's in the city, but the branches are outside. He's not considered like he's in the tchum.
Like a graveyard.
Fascinating. Excellent comparison, like a graveyard, because we're talking about an ohel. Interesting comparison. Okay, now listen to this. Let's say the tree is not on the border, okay? It's 2 feet in. The guy walks in, he's in. Now he grabs hold of this tree. Now he's out. Isn't that fascinating? One more time.
Extraterritoriality.
Extraterritoriality. There's a famous movie with that. E.T., right? Okay. Now, you walked into the border. You're in the border. Hugging the tree makes me outside the border.
Oh, I see. So you become to be...
So I ran in. I passed the line.
You become to be an extension of the outside.
That's what he's telling you. Extraterritoriality. Okay? So it's almost like an embassy.
Right.
Right? You're in New York, no problem. You walk into the embassy of Congo. Where are you now? For all laws.
Congo.
You're in the Congo. Okay? So we'll have to understand why and how did we learn that we follow the branches? And why should we follow the branches and not the roots of the tree? Let's explain where this limud comes from. Viramini asked the Gemara, Viramini, let me ask you a contradiction. Okay? Ilan shehu omed bifnim. You have a tree that it's planted inside. What's inside over here? Inside over here is talking about with regards to Ma'aseh Sheni, it's inside Yerushalayim. V'notel achutz, and its branches lean outside, or omed bachutz, or it's standing outside, v'notel lifnim, and it's leaning inside. Mikineged hachoma v'lifnim kilifnim. Every part of the tree that's in is in. Mikineged hachoma v'lachutz, achutz. That seems so much more logical. Right? So the part of the tree that's outside, it's out off past the wall, past the tchum, that's not in Jerusalem. The part of the tree that's in, including the branch up until the point where it leaves, is in. That's what you would have thought. So, from opposite the wall and in, lifnim. Lachutz. That's the halacha with regards to Maaseh Sheni. So, why would you say over here that the tree location is decided by the branches? The Gemara answers, by the way, Gemara heads. What's the answer going to be? Without knowing the answer, what's the answer going to be? Give me the framework of the answer.
I would have thought.
One more time. By here it says, with regards to Goel Adam and Iriklat, this is the law. Ask the Gemara, but by Ma'aser Sheni we learned that when a tree is outside of the walls of Jerusalem or inside the walls of Jerusalem, has a different set of parameters with regards to the Ma'aser Sheni. What's the answer going to be? In some way, shape, or form. There's a difference between Ma'aser Sheni and Iriklat. So the question is predicated on the way we look at the tree is obviously the same here and there. The answer is going to be, who said? You understand? I want you to understand the framework of the Gemara without even knowing what the Gemara is going to say. Let's see what the Gemara now does say. The Gemara says, Maaser a'are miklat karamit. You want to ask me a question from Ir Miklat? You want to ask me on Ir Miklat from Ma'aser Sheni? Ma'aser b'chomat ala rachmana. When it comes to Ma'aser, the Torah explicitly made the laws dependent on the wall, on being in the wall. Are Miklat, Ir Miklat b'dirat ala rachmana. In Ir Miklat, what made you be in the city and safe? Where you dwell, where you live. The person needs to go to Galut and live in this city. Sham, that's where his dira is. Sham tehe mitato, sham tehe kvurato. Binofo mitdarle. On the branches, a person could live. Bi'ikaro lo mitdarle. You can't dwell in the trunk. The surface area of the tree is which part of it? The branches of the tree. You can't dwell on the vertical of the tree trunk. So therefore, where would we decide is the dwelling part that's going to be safe? Where the branches are. Fascinating. Okay? Virami maaser maaser. So the Gemara says, okay, you got me. I want to leave you with a question, by the way. We don't have time to resolve it today. But what would happen if the person, there's a sequoia, and he just hollowed out the trunk, and he lived in the trunk? We just told you that the trunk is going to follow the branches.
Right.
Why? Because it's dependent on dwelling.
Right.
And you dwell on the branches.
Right.
What happens if a person carved out the inside of the tree? And he's living in the trunk.
So he by the trunk.
But that's just an exception, no?
Right.
So, here we go. Gemara heads in full force. First thing is, okay, so that's what the guy did. So that's where he's living. That's the dirah. That's what we want. The second answer is, you're the exception. You're not the majority. The majority of the cases is dwelling happens on surface area. It doesn't happen in a trunk. So since that's the case, we might say that when we're trying to figure out what dirah is, the ruling is dirah is the branches. Fascinating, right? Can I give you another example? Just a weird example. I don't know if you've ever been to a cliff. When you look over a cliff and you see sometimes a tree grows out horizontally from a cliff. You ever see that? Yeah. Imagine a scenario where you have a horizontal trunk and vertical branches.
That's the exception, not the norm.
I understand. I'm just saying, would we then call the trunk branches? In other words, is branches a euphemism for vertical?
No, the branches is definition. It's a definition.
You see, I'm not saying yes or no.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, we learned the Gemara. I don't have a proof yet.
Right.
All the Gemara said is, bidira, a person, bidira talarachmana. Where do people live? People live on the branch. Why do people live on the branches? I don't know anyone who lives on branches, except they live in Long Branch. Right? Who lives on branches? The answer is, it means it's possible to live on, because it's a flat surface.
Right. Crusoe.
Sorry?
Robinson Crusoe.
Lived on?
A tree.
No, he lived in a tree. No?
On. Yeah.
Right, so what I'm asking is,
You had a tree house on a branch.
Friday.
so a treehouse on a branch is on the branches, correct. What if you had a treehouse on a tree trunk?
No plug.
Wouldn't we say, so I want you guys to understand, it might be that we're just giving an example when we say the branches, and really we mean anything livable on. But if it's not livable on, it's going to be batel to the branches. I can understand that. Or it might be that the normal case is branches are the vertical, so therefore we gave you that. And the other case is not a normal case, so it's a lo plug or it's a majority. Excellent. So we have both options in our minds, and that's how we're going to keep them. Gemara Cup, both options are possibilities. The Gemara says, so you just told me that I can't ask a question, Maaser, to Ir Miklat. Why? Because the parameters of Maaser are dependent on a wall, whatever's in, whatever's out. And the parameter of Ir Miklat is based on dwelling. So whatever you could dwell on, okay? So the Gemara says, okay, fine. Virami Maaser, Maaser. So let me ask you a question. Maaser on Maaser. Titania, the Braita said, Mishnah says, Yerushalayim, halech achar anof. Yerushalayim, you go after the branches. So with regards to Maaser Sheni. Be'arei miklat, halech achar hanof. When it comes to Ir Miklat, also you go with regards to the branches. So you see that the Mishnah is telling you that in Maaser Sheni, you follow the branches. Okay? And on Ir Miklat, you follow the branches. That's not surprising, because Ir Miklat follow the branches is what we said. What's surprising is that we just said Maaser Sheni, follow the branches. But earlier we said, Maaser Sheni, whatever's in is in. What if trunk is in, trunk is in. Branches are in, branches are in. Half the branches in, half the branches in. Now we're saying, follow the branches. And something becomes batel to something else. So the Gemara says, once I asked you that question on the Braita of Maaser Sheni, now maybe we reinterpret it, and now we have to answer also our Mishnah as well. Amar Rav Kana says, Lo kasha. There's no question over here between our Mishnah on a tree and branches and the Mishnah, which says, in our Mishnah, what do we say? In our Mishnah, we said that if the branches are ilan shomer b'toch tchum, right? Nofo noteh b'toch tchum, hakol olech achar nof. Our Mishnah that says you always follow the branches versus that Mishnah of Maaser Sheni, no questions. How Rabbi Yehuda? This opinion is Rabbi Yehuda. That's the shita of Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbanan, the Mishnah in Maaser Sheni, that's following a different opinion, the Rabbanan, and they hold differently with regards to the tree and branches. The Tanya, because we learned in the Braita exactly this machloket. Rabbi Yehuda Omer b'me'ara holech achar pitcha. When you come to a cave, right? So the cave is dug in somewhere, okay? And you have the external part of the cave is opening up into a new area. Be'ilan olech achar nofo. So with the me'ara, even though the cave is dug in, how do we assess it? By the mouth of the cave. Where's the mouth of the cave? Not where does it go? When it comes to ilan, when it comes to a tree, holech achar nofo. You go after the branches. That's the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. So since Rabbi Yehuda is speaking with regards to Maaser Sheni, and he says that be'ilan holech achar nofo, so therefore that opinion in Maaser Sheni to follow the branches is the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. Masha'en ken, when we have a Mishnah in Maaser Sheni that says differently, which is with regards to the Rabbanan that they hold that you go based on exactly where the tree is, in the wall in, outside the wall out, that's the opinion of Rabbanan. So we have a machloket Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbanan in Maaser Sheni. So you brought me now two different Mishnayot in Maaser Sheni. I have no problem with them. You know why? That's a machloket Rabbi Yehuda and the Rabbanan. Okay? We'll pick up here from Be'ezat Hashem in the next session. Baruch Hanei Le'olam. Amen ve'amen.